Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the annual educational symposium of the American Parkinson's Disease Association Connecticut chapter. As we come to the end of Parkinson Awareness Month in April, we are grateful to have the opportunity to offer you this program in virtual format since we are still unable to gather everyone safely together in person. It has certainly been a tough year for all of us, and at the APDA, we recognize that it is only by staying connected and continuing to provide you with education and support in your fight against Parkinson's disease that we can be your partners in identifying ways to continue to live your best life in spite of and with Parkinson's disease. This year's symposium theme is Technology and Innovation in Parkinson's Disease Management. My name is Rachel Jeffreyon, and I'm so honored to be hosting you all week long in my capacity as the APDA Connecticut Information and Referral Center Coordinator. We will get to know each other better over the next 5 days as we listen to experts in the field of Parkinson's disease kick off this year with our week-long virtual symposium. The American Parkinson's Disease Association, or APDA, is the largest grassroots network dedicated to fighting Parkinson's disease. We work tirelessly to assist the more than 1 million Americans with Parkinson's disease live life to the fullest. APDA distinguishes itself as the national organization working one-on-one with the Parkinson's community to make each day better. You can find more about all the resources the APDA has to offer by visiting us on our website at apdaparkinson.org or by calling us at 860-734-6393. And to formally welcome you all to this program is our very own APDA Connecticut Chapter Board President, Erica Fort. Erica has been with the APDA CT chapter since 2017. Initially serving as secretary before transitioning her role to president in 2019. Under her leadership, we have seen our board chapter grow from 9 members to the 16 passionate and energetic board members we have today. She brought her skills as the former assistant executive director of schools and programs at the ACEs of North Haven, and her love for the Parkinson community in her role as Michael's wife and care partner to the APDA boardroom, and has shepherded us through the most challenging of years. Erica, welcome, and as always, take the helm.
Hi, thank you. I hope you can all hear me. My name is Erica Fort. My husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's 24 years ago. While we were initially reeling with 2 young boys that we needed to raise together, we knew that planning for our future was the key. That's what I love about APDA. The focus on optimism and support is so important. I'm so proud to be a part of the Connecticut APDA board, a group of dedicated people from throughout the Parkinson's community. I'm excited about the work we have done. Many educational webinars have been held throughout the years, but the work that has been done by our new INR coordinator, Rachel, and our chapter coordinator, Marlene, to make these sessions happen during these trying times has been remarkable. I love the work we do with our community to provide patient aid scholarships, funds for individuals who need financial support for medical expenses, exercise equipment support. We award 150 scholarships a year. And when we get back to normal, the community aid scholarships to assist groups to support excellent programs that require some financial assistance will be available again. All of these applications are available on our website for any Connecticut resident who is interested. These grants are totally funded by your generosity. We hope you consider donating to help our community. I'm excited about the next 5 days of learning and growing. Please enjoy this symposium and thank you for joining us.
Sorry, it's muted there. Thank you. Before we get started with today's talk, we would like to extend a special thank you to the sponsors of this year's symposium. Our heartfelt gratitude to our gold level sponsors, Adamas and Neurocrine, our silver level sponsors, AbbVie, APDA, Griswold Home Care, Medtronic, Synovian, and Supernus, and our bronze level sponsors, Brightview on New Canaan and Kiowa Kirin. We will get to know some of the representatives of these sponsors throughout the week. Please visit their websites for more information on their products and services. And now for the ground rules. You will notice that on this Zoom platform, you have all been muted to minimize unintentional distractions to the speaker from background noise. We absolutely do want to hear from you though, so please feel free to type any questions you may have in the Q&A box throughout the presentation. We will have a few minutes after the talk to read your questions to our speaker and get you the answers you need. Just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom banner of your screen and type in your question in the forum addressed to everyone. Don't forget that this symposium features a different expert speaker and new topic every day throughout the week. So join us again tomorrow through Friday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. with the same Zoom link that was provided to you with your registration. And now to introduce today's speaker is Scott Parmalee, representative of one of our silver sponsors, AbbVie.
Thank you, Rachel. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I work for AbbVie and my name is Scott Parmalee. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Leon Meytin to all of you today to kick off our week-long symposium. His talk is entitled, Wearable Devices, Changing the Way Clinicians Manage Parkinson's Disease. Dr. Meytin, a fellowship-trained movement disorder neurologist out of the Mount Sinai Beth Israel program of New York City, joined Hartford Healthcare's Chase Family Movement Disorder Center amid our pandemic in the summer of 2020. He sees patients at Hartford Healthcare's Stamford satellite and in less than a year has already established himself there as an excellent clinician and educator. The Chase Family Movement Disorder Center has locations all across Connecticut in Vernon, Cheshire, Mystic, Torrington, and Stamford. You may also have seen Dr. Meytin in his various television and Facebook live appearances talking about Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia, or may have caught him giving one of his many community lectures throughout the state. Although he speaks Russian fluently, Dr. Meytin will give his talk today in English. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Leon Meytin.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thank you for that very warm introduction, Scott. So as he mentioned, this talk is specifically going to be about wearable devices and how we can utilize this in Parkinson's disease specifically. I'm excited to be the first speaker of the week. We have a lot of very interesting things planned for the entire week. And so every day we have a different speaker, as mentioned. And so hopefully I can kick it off with a very interesting topic and hopefully a useful topic. So this is what I'm going to be talking about for the duration of the next 40 or so minutes. First, I'm just going to introduce Parkinson's very briefly and just review what Parkinson's is. And then I'm going to go over what wearable devices are. And then the majority of the talk, I'm going to discuss several different wearable devices. With each device, I'm going to give it a rating based on the utility that we can use in a day-to-day life in our Parkinson's population. So very briefly, Parkinson's, which is a very common neurological disorder, is a neurodegenerative condition that really affects millions of patients worldwide. It's extremely common, more so in those that are elderly, above the age of 60, but I see some patients as young as 20 years old. To simplify things, it's really due to a decrease in a chemical called dopamine in the brain. Obviously, Parkinson's is much more complex than that, but if you want to take one thing away from what Parkinson's is caused by, just think about a low amount of dopamine in your brain. Symptoms vary from person to person, but typically you may see tremor, balance problems, stiffness, slowness in day-to-day tasks, but also other symptoms such as anxiety, changes in sense of smell, sleep problems, or even constipation. We have many medications to treat symptoms, but medications alone are not enough. And so that's where this talk comes in, and to see how we can harness the advances in technology to improve Parkinson's symptoms. So today I'm going to be talking about wearable devices, or wearables for short. You may not have heard this term specifically, but I'm sure everyone is familiar with it because an Apple iWatch or an Apple Watch is a type of wearable device. Wearable technology in healthcare includes devices, typically electronic, that patients can wear or somehow utilize that are designed to either collect certain data, whether it's heart rate, tremor variations, response to medications, to track symptoms, to assist in diagnosis, or to provide some kind of therapeutic treatment. As of 2019, where we have the most recent data, more than 50 million Americans use some kind of wearable device monthly. Biotech companies have spent billions and billions of dollars to harness this kind of technology. Typically, when we talk about wearables, we are going to be talking about wrist-worn devices, such as the Apple Watch, but we will also talk about other means of wearable devices. So wearables in Parkinson's have a lot of different utilities, and I'm going to focus on a few things during this talk, but really the opportunities are endless for how we can incorporate wearable devices in Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. So for one, it can improve medication compliance. It can assist in diagnosis. It can be used as a treatment option. It can be used to track the progress of symptoms. It can be used to track sleep, to track and encourage exercise, to track heart rate and other vital signs, and finally as a safety device. And you'll understand more about what I mean with all of these features coming up. All right, so the first device that we're going to talk about is probably the most common one that everyone is familiar with, and that's a smartwatch. Apple Watch probably being the most common, but Fitbit, Android Watch are all types of smartwatches. There are multiple uses of the smartwatch specifically for Parkinson's disease. First, we're going to talk about how it can be used to monitor vital signs. Next, we're going to talk about how it can be used for sleep, how it can be used as a reminder to take medications, how it can be used to assist in exercise, and finally, and probably the most important component, is how it can actually be used as a life-saving device. So, and I'm sure many people have heard of commercials or advertisements for the use of the Apple Watch and other devices to track heart rate. And I really think this is an important feature, not only in Parkinson's disease, but in general. Smartwatches can continuously measure heart rate and other vital signs, such as blood pressure, and even oxygen. Even some can measure temperature. The one important thing about smartwatches in terms of vital sign monitoring is it can actually detect arrhythmias. And there was a big paper published in the New England Journal of Medicine not too long ago that shows you that the smartwatch can actually be used to detect something called atrial fibrillation, which can be deadly. A lot of times this goes undiagnosed until patients present with symptoms. With the watch, you can actually check on these symptoms before you feel anything specific. Although atrial fibrillation isn't necessarily common in Parkinson's, our patients who have Parkinson's are at risk of having any other condition, such as atrial fibrillation. And anytime we can mitigate any other symptom that might affect Parkinson's, that's a big deal. We also use certain medications that can sometimes lower the heart rate, and so this device can keep track of that and pick that up. Another common feature for smartwatches is the use of the smartwatch specifically for sleep. So sleep is a very common problem in Parkinson's disease, unfortunately. Poor sleep can lead to depression, daytime fatigue, less efficacy of our medications, and there's an increased risk of dementia over time. Smartwatches can track the quantity and the quality of sleep. So here are just some pictures, and for those who are familiar with the Apple Watch, you're probably familiar with what it looks like, but it shows you how many hours a night you're sleeping And when you compare that to what the average person thinks they're sleeping, we typically overestimate this. We often think that we sleep much more than how much we actually sleep. And so this device can really show us how much you're sleeping per night, and also can show us the quality of sleep per night. The smartwatch can also be used as a pill reminder system. So one of the common things that I hear from patients is that it's tough to remember to take medications on a continuous basis. By setting reminders on your watch, wherever you are, this can actually remind you that you have to take a pill. A lot of our pills are taken 3, 4, even 5 times per day. And so this will make it a lot easier to remember to take medications. Another common use of the watch is for exercise. So exercise is extremely important in Parkinson's disease. And for the patients that know me, I stress the importance of exercise on a regular basis. For those patients that exercise, they feel better, the medications work better, and typically they have less daytime fatigue the next day. One of the things that the watch can do for you is it can track how much exercise you have, and it can also remind you on a daily basis to exercise more. Another thing that I see commonly with patients is that you can actually share how much you exercise with your friends and family. And this will encourage you to exercise more if you can see that your friend is exercising a little bit more than you, and that will kind of give you that little extra kick to perform more exercise. The final thing I want to mention about the smartwatch specifically, and this I think is probably the most important aspect of it, is that it can actually be a safety device. So it's always on your wrist. So if you were to fall or have an issue, all you have to do is say, "Hey Siri, call 911," or "Hey Siri, call my son." So this way, if you don't have your phone on you, it doesn't matter because the wrist-worn device is always on. So that way you always have access to medical personnel without needing to try to get up and get to your phone. So this is kind of where I talk about the verdict. So with the Apple Watch and with all these smartwatches, I think this is a perfect device. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's a great tool to use in Parkinson's disease, and many patients already have a smartwatch. So it makes it a lot easier. It's safe and relatively inexpensive to use, and it has multiple different uses. It has uses also outside of Parkinson's. So the device is not only to help your Parkinson's symptoms, but obviously you can use it to text, to call, to look at the internet, for a lot of other things. And finally, as I just mentioned, it's always on your wrist. So it gives you that ability to always have that device on hand without having to go out of your way to get something. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the use of wearable devices in medication tracking and to improve compliance. There was a study done not too long ago that shows that up to 60% of patients admitted to not taking medications appropriately or missing specific doses. This becomes a huge problem because our medications are supposed to be taken on a regular basis. They work better when your brain sees the same medication day in and day out. Missing doses can lead to problems not only that day, but the next day. And a lot of times, unfortunately, our medications have to be taken multiple times a day, which is not easy. So we have to find ways to increase compliance. And this is one of the things that I spend a large part of my office visits doing, is ensuring that whatever barriers there are to taking medications appropriately, we address them. As I mentioned, the Apple Watch or Samsung or any other smartwatch has the capability of setting reminders. And this can be very helpful if you own a watch or and are tech savvy. But what about those who don't own a watch or an Apple Watch or don't want a lot of applications on their wrist? So there's a device called the Leap medication tracker. So the Leap is a wrist-worn device similar to a watch. You enter medications on the mobile app. So it asks you a lot of questions about the dose, when you started taking the medication. The device then alerts you to take medications. So you'll see on the bottom right of the screen, there's a little screen that shows confirm. That will pop up on the watch and you will just press confirm when you take the medication. So it allows you to acknowledge whether you took the medication or not, which will allow you to track compliance over time so that you will know which doses are missed and which doses are not missed. So if in an hour from now you forget if you took a pill, this will remind you. Another key feature, which I think is very important, is that you can designate family members to receive alerts. So they'll get updates to see if you're missing medication doses or not. And then they can reach out to you and say, hey, you missed dose X, Y, and Z. What was the reason behind it? And we can figure out what the problem was. You can also designate physicians to get these alerts so that when we see you in the office, we can actually see which doses were taken and which doses were not taken. It's a separate device, not on your Apple Watch itself. So like I said, for those that are not very tech savvy and don't want a complicated device, this is much more simple and much more straightforward. This is what the screens look like. So you will input all the medications, and you can have a family member do this for you. You put in all the medications, the times that you take, and then you get a medication history of which doses were taken and which doses were missed. Another important feature of this device is that it can actually automatically send refill requests to your pharmacy. So once you put in all the medication information, this can serve as a reminder to get your medications refilled to your pharmacy. Another advantage of this device over, say, an Apple Watch or a Samsung Galaxy Watch is that there's a 20-day battery life with one charge. Because you're not using it for a million other reasons, and you're just using it as a medication reminder system, you can use it for the large part of a month without having to recharge it. It does have additional features if you want to use them. So it can monitor heart rate, sleep, steps, exercise, and so forth. But you don't have to use it for those purposes. It currently retails for about $200 to $250, and you can find it on medtechwearables.com if you want to purchase it. As a verdict, I give this 4 out of 5 stars because it's safe, it's relatively inexpensive, and it's a great tool to improve medication compliance. A major drawback, though, is that it's in addition to an Apple Watch, not a replacement. So if you're one of those patients who already has some kind of smartwatch, this may be a little bit cumbersome because now you have to wear a watch on both wrists. So it's really tailored to those individuals who don't already have a smartwatch. We're going to shift gears now to talk about how we can track and measure symptoms at home. Oftentimes I hear in the office that patients do better in the office than they do in real life, which is very, very common. We see patients for a very small subset of time, 30, 45 minutes. We don't see you on a day-to-day basis. It would be nice to have a device where we can actually track symptoms outside of the office so we have more objective data. I'm going to be talking about 2 different devices that will do just that. The first is called the Personal Kinetograph, or the PKG. This is a wrist-worn wearable device that uses something called accelerometers and gyroscopes to continuously measure Parkinson's symptoms while at home. It then has a very complex algorithm to create objective scores and measurements of symptoms that can be presented to myself or other physicians. It gives us 3 different scores: a tremor score, a dyskinesia score, which are those involuntary movements, and a bradykinesia score, which is the score for slowness. It was cleared by the FDA, given a regulatory clearance back in 2016. This is what we see as physicians. As a patient, you'd see a slightly different version, which is easier to read. But as physicians, we can see over the course of the day what happens to symptoms. And so a lot of these peaks and valleys correspond to worsening symptoms. So we can actually correlate this to when patients take medications, when they exercise. We can correlate this to days where we've had better or worse sleep. So this gives us a 24-hour time period of what's happening to your symptoms when you're outside of the office. One important thing to understand is that with these devices, you have to validate the data. You have to make sure the scores that they give you are actually accurate and usable. And this device, since it's been around now for about 5 years with preclinical data before that, there's a lot of data to show that the data that we receive is not only meaningful, but it provides adequate data so that we can actually make medication adjustments, and that the symptoms that we see in the office do correlate to the scores they provide us, and the fluctuations, which are the ups and downs that you might have throughout the day, will correlate to what you think. So more so than just telling us what happened throughout the day, this gives us a fairly accurate assessment of your day-to-day life. Currently, it's not available for patients to purchase on their own. It's currently mostly used in clinical trials right now, although physician offices can purchase the device for use for their patients. The fee right now for physician offices, once again, not for patients, is about $50 a month per patient in the office. Patients may need to have a copay for the remote monitoring component of it, but that's based on your insurance and typically very low. For the most part, physicians are using this in clinical trials and not for private personal use, although I think this will change over time because it is a very valuable source. I gave this 3 to 5 stars because although it looks promising and there is objective evidence, it's once again an additional wrist-worn device that you have to use on top of a smartwatch. It cannot be purchased by patients, and it gets to be a little bit expensive for Parkinson's clinics when we have a lot of patients. So the actual fees need to be restructured a little bit to make this easier for patients to access. But I think this has a lot of potential utility. I'm very excited about this because one of the most complicating parts about Parkinson's is how symptoms fluctuate throughout the day. And it's very hard as a patient to try to pinpoint what's going on. So this will give us that availability without worrying, are you giving accurate information when we have this device to kind of back up what you think on a day-to-day basis. Moving on to a somewhat similar system is called the Kinesia system. Similar to the PKG, the Kinesia system is a wireless system for quantifying motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease via accelerometers and gyroscopes. Similar to the PKG, it's not a treatment, but a way of obtaining objective evidence. The Kinesia system currently has 3 different versions or models available. The Kinesia 1 system is a finger sensor only. Kinesia 360 is a wrist and ankle system. And the Kinesia U is actually an application you can download on your phone. It's not a device itself. So the Kinesia 1 and the Kinesia 360, similar to the PKG system, is really used for clinical trials, not for personal use. Patients wear either a finger sensor with the Kinesia 1 or a wrist and ankle sensor for a set number of times per day. The mobile application that you have downloaded on your phone then guides you through various tasks similar to what we do in the office. Data from the motion sensor is then uploaded to their web portal, and they also have real-time algorithms that calculate severity scores ranging from 0 to 4, which are shown to be highly correlated to physician ratings. So as I mentioned, this device is specifically used in clinical trials. This is just an example of a study that was done using the Kinesia system. This was looking at deep brain stimulation, which is a surgical tool we have for Parkinson's disease. And they used the Kinesia system to be able to monitor patient symptoms at home. Moving on, the Kinesia U, which is a part of the Kinesia system, allows you to use your own smartwatch, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Samsung device, along with the Kinesia U application that is downloaded on your phone in order to provide data on the severity of tremor, slowness, and dyskinesia. It's not continuous, but it requests two tasks that you perform: hands resting and pronation and supination of the wrist. The watch then uses algorithms to calculate severity scores on a 0 to 4 rating scale. Patients and physicians can get the reports. It does require a prescription from a physician that we send to the company. It's about $25 a month for patients to use. And this is essentially what it looks like on your end as a patient. On your phone itself, and once again, this is not a separate device. You utilize the smartwatch you already have and the phone that you already have. Most smartwatches already have accelerometers and gyroscopes, so they can use that with this system itself. So it will walk you through these two steps: resting your hands and then pronating and supinating your wrist. You could do this as many times as necessary throughout the day. Typically, I would say maybe 3 to 5 times per day, although depending on the patient, we can do more or less times. You then get a report that looks like this. The version that physicians get is a little bit more complex, but ultimately gives us the same results. So as you can see on the left, or actually both really, there's a time scale of when you actually did the testing, and then a score, really from 0 to 4, 0 being none, and increasing to severe, giving you a score for the tremor on the left, and then on the right, the symptom of slowness, and the same type of score can be used for dyskinesia. So this way we can look at your symptoms throughout the day, and I can say, in the morning, your tremor is worse. In the middle of the day, the tremor is better. And then as the day goes on, the tremors start to pick up. Using this, we can then adjust medications based on how you actually feel throughout the day. Once again, we have to validate this data. We have to know that the scores that they're providing are accurate and similar to what patients report and what physicians see in the office. Based on their scores, the correlation is very good. So the scores that they provide are very similar in terms of severity to what patients report and to what physicians reported in the trials based on what they saw. So the watch correlates to physicians and to patient experience. It's also very reliable. So time to time, the scores that we get are reliable. So it's not as if one time you'll get one score and a different time you'll get a different score. So here's my verdict for the Kinesia system. For the Kinesia 1 and the Kinesia 360, I give it 3 out of 5 stars because although it's very useful, it's currently only really available for clinical trials. The Kinesia U, however, I give 4 out of 5 stars because you can use your own device. So you don't need to purchase a separate wearable device. You can use a device you already have. It's relatively inexpensive at $25 a month. It's simple to use, and it could provide your physician with objective measurements outside of the office. Just a brief comparison of the two devices. They can both provide objective scores. They're both non-invasive. They're both relatively easy to use. The PKG is more of a continuous system, but once again, it's only for clinical trials or primarily for clinical trials. And the Kinesia system, the Kinesia U in particular, the big advantage of that is it can be utilized on your own smartwatch, which I think is a huge advantage. We're going to switch gears just a little bit, going from measuring symptoms to talking about how we can use wearable devices to actually treat tremor specifically. So first, I'm going to talk about something called the CALA device. Now, the CALA device is not actually approved for Parkinson's yet, but it's approved for a similar type of tremor condition called essential tremor. And because there's very good data for essential tremor, my hope is that it will eventually be utilized for Parkinson's disease. It recently got breakthrough device designation by the FDA for use of action tremors in Parkinson's disease. So not the rest tremors, but action tremors, which are tremors that come out when you go to use your hand, such as pick up your phone or hold a cup. The device delivers electrical stimulation to the nerves in your wrist. This then goes back to the brain and somehow disrupts the abnormal signals in the tremor network of an area in your brain called the thalamus. That's how we think this device works. It's worn for 40 minutes twice per day, and the studies have shown that it improves action tremor for essential tremor for about an hour and a half after each session. So it's not going to help all day long, but it gives you a good amount of relief in terms of action tremor. It's not covered by insurance yet, although the company did mention they're working on that. It is a little bit expensive at about $3,000 and with a monthly prescription of about $150 per month, although there is a 2-month trial that's available for $99. There's also no data yet for resting tremors in Parkinson's. So resting tremors are much more common than action tremor in Parkinson's. And so we still have to see that data for rest tremor. Although I think eventually the company will shift gears and try to improve rest tremor in Parkinson's. This is just a study that they did specifically for essential tremor. So once again, not for Parkinson's, but for essential tremor. And they showed that 62% of patients improved from moderate to severe tremor to only a slight to mild tremor. 54% of patients also reported a greater than 50% reduction in tremor. I give this a 2 out of 5 review, but primarily that's because this talk is for Parkinson's and the data we have so far is for essential tremor. They are, like I said, reviewing this device for action tremor in Parkinson's, but not rest tremor just yet. It's also a little costly and only provides temporary relief. However, it really may be beneficial for those patients with an action tremor as part of their Parkinson's disease, or those patients with both Parkinson's disease and essential tremor, which unfortunately does happen time to time. Next, I'm going to move from wrist-worn devices to talking about something called laser lights or visual cueing devices to help with freezing of gait. So freezing of gait in Parkinson's is very, very common. It's seen in about 47 to 81% of patients with Parkinson's at some point in their life. Some patients have this much more often, others never have it. However, freezing of gait is very dangerous in Parkinson's. There's an increased risk of falls and a significant reduction in patient independence and mobility in freezing of gait. Freezing of gait is a very complex component of Parkinson's and unfortunately doesn't always respond well to medications. I typically employ a lot of physical therapy and occupational therapy to help with freezing of gait, but we need something else. Visual stimuli can diminish the freezing of gait that occurs with walking. And visual stimuli can be as simple as a laser light. There are 3 different versions of these visual cueing devices or these visual laser lights. There's the laser shoe, the laser cane, and the laser walker. So there was a study published in the Journal of Neurology, which is one of the biggest journals that we have for neurology, that looked at patients who have gait. The trial was done using laser shoes. And so if you can see in the top right corner, there is this picture of a shoe that has this attachment on it, that has a little laser on it. The participants in the study performed 10 trials with and 10 trials without these cueing laser shoes. What they found was that almost 50% of patients had there's a 50% improvement in freezing of gait or freezing of gait episodes when patients use this cueing device. And there was a 50% reduction in time spent frozen. Another similar study performed looked at patients with and without the laser cane. The laser cane was effective at improving the forwards and backwards and side-to-side movement that occurs with freezing of gait in Parkinson's. 82% of participants had freezing episodes without any assistive device. But only 27% of patients had freezing episodes with the laser cane. Another study looked at falls in Parkinson's. Falls in Parkinson's are often very complex and might happen from several reasons, but freezing of gait is one of the more common reasons that patients end up falling. So in this open label study, they looked at laser light cues, and they found that patients that used some form of laser light cue had a 40% reduction in falls. This is just a slide to show where patients can purchase some of these laser devices. So one of the more common walkers that I recommend for patients is something called the U-Step walker. The U-Step walker can add a laser cue onto it. So it's about $225 for the additional component of the laser cue, although the walker itself is about $575. You can go to ustep.com and purchase this device. The laser cane is seen in multiple sites. Ustep.com has a version of the laser cane on it, but many different medical supply stores online will have it. From what I've seen, it's about $225. The shoes are a little bit more expensive. You can get them at walkwithpath.com, and they retail for about $640 right now. For the shoes, they basically attach to any shoe, so it makes it a little bit easier in the sense that you don't need a separate device like a cane or walker. The verdict with the laser lights, I give this a 4 to 5 star rating because the use of laser lights was associated with a major decrease in freezing gait and falls in Parkinson's, and we really don't have many other options to treat the freezing episodes. The major con is that it can be a little cumbersome because you have to use a separate device like a cane or walker. But for those patients who already have to use a cane or walker, this is not a big disadvantage, and this is not a cumbersome thing. Another con that I didn't note here, but really should be noted, is it can get a little expensive. And as I showed here, it can range from $200 up to $600. But since it is a major deterrent in falls and freezing, it oftentimes is worth it. So I'm getting to the end of my slide set here. I hope you can see there's a large variety and utility of wearable devices. They're typically convenient and safe. They're very important in the day-to-day life of most Parkinson's patients. I want you to keep an eye and ear out in the next few years as more and more of these devices will start hitting the market and will address various symptoms. I think the devices such as the PKG that I mentioned in the Kinesia U system will get even better. If you're interested in any of these devices, please discuss this with your movement disorder specialist at the Chase Family Movement Disorder Center, and we'll be happy to set you up. Now we'll move on to the Q&A section. If anybody has any questions on these devices or any other devices that I didn't mention.
Thank you, Dr. Meytin. That was an incredible presentation, really fascinating topic. I'm sure our audience has some questions that they put in as you were speaking. Everyone, please continue to use either the chat box or the Q&A portion to ask questions. Amanda Brill, our board secretary of our APDA Connecticut chapter, will be moderating our Q&A session. Amanda, were there any questions for Dr. Meytin?
Yes, there was a couple that came through. The first one is, how is dopamine distributed throughout the brain? What is your working theory about why exercise is so beneficial? Is there a difference between high intensity, low intensity, and the benefits experienced? Also, how does wearables play into or contribute to using to tracking symptoms and monitoring symptoms?
So I'll address, I guess there's a few different questions. As far as dopamine in the brain, That's a very complex question. There's a lot of different answers for it specifically. In Parkinson's, we think that the major problem is in an area of the brain called the basal ganglia. So that's where the deficiency of dopamine really plays a key component. Although dopamine is really available throughout the brain, and over time, you may have issues with dopamine in other components of the brain as well. Exercise specifically is important in Parkinson's, not that it gives you more dopamine, but it allows the dopamine you have available to be more efficient. And I hear this time and time again that when patients exercise, they feel better. Their medications work better because the Cinemet that you're taking, which is essentially dopamine, is able to be utilized much more efficiently. And then Amanda, what was the last question or component of that question?
I think you're muted, Amanda.
Do wearables track your exercise and produce helpful information to managing your symptoms?
Yes, so particularly with the smartwatches, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch or a Fitbit, they can track how many steps you take. They can track your calories. They can show you on a week-to-week basis how you're exercising, which is important. I know me personally, once I got a smartwatch, I realized certain days I'm not exercising, and it's kind of a cue to exercise more. So on days that I look at my watch and I realize I have less activity, it forces me to increase my exercise later on in the day. Sometimes it's as simple as just taking a 5 or 10-minute walk. But if you know that you're not exercising that day and the watch kind of reminds you of that, it provides an extra stimulus to exercise more. Additionally, you can actually share your results with family members and friends. So you can kind of make a little competition out of it. And I have several patients that go to Parkinson's boxing classes, and they form these groups where they all share their results and they can show who exercises more. And they have little awards where whoever exercises more that week will pay for dinner or things like that. So it kind of makes it a fun challenge for you and your friends. And so that it's a way to track your exercise from day to day, but also allows you to kind of have that camaraderie to increase exercise based on what your friends are doing.
Thank you. The next question is, can the cost of a smartwatch be tax deductible under medical?
So sometimes, yes, it really depends on your insurance company. I think eventually it's going to be more of a mainstay. The problem is that smartwatches have other features. So I can't imagine insurance company will just start paying for the Apple Watch or similar devices that have other uses. They might be more willing to pay for things like the Fitbit or the Leap medication tracker that I mentioned, or even the PKG or Kinesia system, because those are more tailored towards healthcare specifically. The Apple Watch, it really depends on your insurance company, but some will reimburse you if you get a letter from your doctor.
All right. Let's see. Is the Apple Watch waterproof? Can you wear it in the shower?
Yes, the newer versions are waterproof. I wouldn't constantly use it in the water, but from what I understand, it absolutely is waterproof up to a certain depth. And you can go swimming. I have patients that will go swimming in a pool and track their exercise that way. So it is to a certain extent waterproof.
So we have another question here. Any knowledge of the gyro glove that is in development in the UK? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's
Yes.
GYRO.
So the gyro glove, think about it similar to the Cala device. It basically provides a vibration with the intent to kind of counteract these abnormal vibratory signals that go on in our brain. So I did see that. I didn't include that here because I don't think there's enough information yet. But devices like the gyro glove or similar devices to the Cala device eventually will be utilized for tremor treatment. There's something called the Emma watch, which I also didn't really mention here, but it was developed a couple of years ago by Microsoft with a patient named Emma who had Parkinson's in her early 20s. And they developed a device very similar to the CALA device, which uses vibration and electrical stimulation to kind of interrupt these abnormal tremor signals that happen in the brain. The EMMA device didn't really take off, and I think it was just a prototype. But devices like that and the CALA device and the gyro glove, I think, will be a treatment for tremor in the future for Parkinson's disease. Okay,
so one follow-up question that was asked was on the tax deduction was, what about an IRS medical deduction?
That I'm honestly not too certain of. I know that you can deduct medical expenses from the IRS, but that you'd have to talk to a CPA or a tax lawyer to figure out what is officially deductible and what's not.
Okay. So we are going to close, and with the other questions, we will send them to Dr. Meytin and see if he can get us some answers on them. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully this was enjoyable. I think this will be posted eventually on the APDA Parkinson website if you want to rewatch it. But like I said, if you're interested in any of these devices or some of our clinical trials, just give our office a call and we'll be happy to schedule an appointment.
Thank you once again, Dr. Meytin, and to everyone for joining us today. If you have any other questions that may or not be related to this topic, feel free to contact us at apdaparkinson.org/CT or call me, Rachel Jeffrion, at 860-734-6393. Don't forget to log in and join us again tomorrow at 2 p.m. for our talk on Parkinson's disease and dementia, past, present, and future with Dr. Ginger Mills. If you enjoyed today's presentation, we hope you will consider supporting the APDA with a donation. With your help, APDA Connecticut can continue to deliver more programs and services like this one, which in these challenging times are needed more than ever. See you all tomorrow and stay safe.